Thank you, Presiding Officer. To state that an independent Scotland would have a written constitution is an exercise in stating the obvious. I have to say, I thought a very fine and eloquent speech when Christine Graham made that very straightforward statement and turned it something into the more of the poetry of it. But no new state is now formed that does not develop and adopt a written constitution. So it is a statement of the obvious. And the lack of a codified constitution in the UK is a historical oddity, an anomaly. It's maintained by institutions that have, in relative terms globally, been stable over centuries. So the debate that we have today, not at the moment, not right now, but I'll certainly come back to you. The debate that was brought today, that there is benefits to codification above flexibility, offers very little insight so far into the trade-offs between them, although I think Keith Brown also gave a good speech in that regard. I have to say it's not a debate that greatly animates me or my party. We are, and always have been, more animated by the delivery of social protection and progress rather than writing down those aspirations on parchment. No, I'm just getting started. Thank you. So the paper in question suggests that the NHS be written into our constitution. But the reality of protecting our NHS will not be achieved in prose or by a plebiscite. As Bevan made clear, the NHS will last as long as there are folk left with faith to fight for it. It is a political question of the will and means to raise the resources and competent government to channel them appropriately. And it's this incompetent SNP government who have driven our NHS to its knees and to the brink of collapse. Professionals who have dedicated their lives to our citizens through our NHS are now openly asking whether it can survive. And as reported just this weekend in the Herald, we have 7,000 Scots awaiting treatment for more than 2 years compared to 600 in England, a country 11 times our size. There's been the complete failure of the NHS recovery plan, the longest waiting times ever, a plethora of waiting time guarantees that have been met. The SNP are making an unholy mess of protecting our NHS today. Instead, we're invited today to welcome its protection in a fictional document in some undetermined future. And that should be a worry to all of us. None of that addresses the fact that no comparable small nation has an NHS, that the weight of such committed expenditure is not normally borne by a more limited tax base. None of it recognises the immediate loss of over £10 billion in revenue in the event of secession, which we're being asked to believe would have no adverse effect upon our ability to retain and improve our NHS. None of it is recognising the cost of establishing a new state, building exchange reserves to defend a pegged currency for a foreign power who would at that point be setting interest rates for our separate country. None of this is my proposition, it's this government's policy platform. Which brings us to this weekend's headline performance at the Great Caird Hall in Dundee. The reviews are rolling in and they do not make for pretty reading. It is extraordinarily difficult for anyone to genuinely know what to make of the whole thing. SNP MPs included, apparently. Maybe it's just dreadful writing, they say. Surely it could not have been purposely ambiguous. Well, the First Minister is certainly trying to get good value out of his money for his new spin doctor. The First Minister appears to be telling the country that independence can be decided by 33% of the votes, taking Nicola Sturgeon's widely discredited proposal and going even further. Now, will the vote be monitored by a slightly smaller independence thermometer? Ash Regan might let us know. It's not a serious plan. But that's no surprise, because he's not a serious First Minister. He's attempting to reframe an election and manage party expectations in a desperate attempt to hold on to his job. Presiding Officer, all of this at a time of NHS distress, cost of living crisis and mortgage rate meltdown. Would that we could talk about all of this instead.